25 years, I'm actually quite shocked when I discover that the majority of the students that I teach nowadays are all born after Namibian independence. And it makes me realize that we have a complete generation, 25 years, of people who have been born in freedom and have been born in peace. And I want to emphasize that again. We have a generation in Namibia that has not known war. And that is something extremely important. I think this is something that people completely underestimate, and I, for one, had not expected. I left Namibia in 1986. I was conscripted to serve in the South West African Territorial Force, and I refused to serve in the South African Army. And I came to the Netherlands. At that stage, I had not foreseen, I could not have foreseen the tremendous changes which would take place in Namibia. At that stage, in 1986, there was a full-scale war going on in northern Namibia, southern Angola. At that stage, young men were conscripted to serve in the South African Army and its proxy, the South West African Territorial Force in Namibia. People were being sent off into southern Angola. I had school friends of mine who were stationed in southern Angola and heard Pik Botha saying on the radio, "We categorically deny that there are any South African soldiers in southern Angola." That was a context which suddenly, by strange circumstance, changed completely. Kwitekwanavale, the defeat of the South African Army, the end of the Cold War, and then suddenly, poof, out of nothing, nobody could have foreseen that suddenly in 1990 we had Namibian independence, 25 years ago. Anybody who was 10 years of age in Namibia in 1990 and is now 35 years of age has just known peace, has never known the threat of conscription, has never known war. I wanted to say that. That is the most amazing thing about Namibia. The fact that a country which was racked by war from the 1880s onwards was able to transform itself, was able to create a situation of peaceful development, a situation in which people feel safe. So that's the first thing, peace. I don't think that people can underestimate the importance of peace. And then I'm going to say it once again, peace. Peace is extremely important. Anybody who has experienced bombing or shootings will know this. There are a number of very positive things about Namibia, and I'll be summing up all these positive things. And don't worry, I will be getting onto the negative things just now. But the positive things are, yes, there is freedom of speech. There is freedom of speech in Namibia. There is freedom of press. And there's freedom of association. Yes, you can say what you think in Namibia. You can actually phone up a radio station, you can publish it in a newspaper, you can say whatever you like. The craziest ideas get put down into print. Unfortunately, Hannes Smit of the Windhoek Observer is dead, but anybody who saw this publication would have really enjoyed the craziness of this man. Freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of association. But only to a certain extent and within certain margins. Those of us who have been in Namibia during elections will know that there are certain sections of Namibia where it is better not to declare one's affiliation to the opposition parties. Those of us who have attempted to do research in Namibia and have happened to be in northern Namibia and tried to do research during election times will have been confronted with policemen asking you what you are doing, even though you have the correct papers, even though you have research permission for that particular area. That's as far as it affects academic researchers. but it also affects people, Namibians. Particularly, I want to draw upon what's actually the glaring, the most striking thing actually about Namibia's independence, and that is the wall of silence. The fact that the Namibian government, and in particular SWAPO, has not come to terms with the SWAPO detainees. The thousands of people who were picked up without any form of process, detained, tortured, and many of them disappeared. And their descendants and their relatives still want to know what happened to these people. The wall of silence is extremely important. And unfortunately, people are not being told what has happened to their family members. The second point is Caprivi. The insurrection, the attempted secession of Caprivi in 1999. Yes, it is true, the bulk of the detainees have now been released. But there are still people in prison, still awaiting trial, 15 years after the event. And the fact that a number of people were, let's say, that they accidentally died in detention is a disgrace. And that has to be said. Yet at the same time, KANU, Caprivi African National Union, is able to start organizing once again in Katima Mulilo with permission of the Namibian police. And this is amazing, that you on the one hand you have this complete silence, this repression, the ending of any form of open debate, yet at the same time permission being granted to a political party that explicitly states that it wants independence for Caprivi, and that this party is able to operate openly and above ground in Namibia. I think that's amazing. Another negative thing which I think has to be said, and that is something that is conveniently forgotten, is the position of minorities. And I'm not talking about whites. I'm not talking about white people like myself who've gone on to enjoy fantastic lives in Namibia after independence without any loss of their benefits. If anything, it's only become a lot better for white people. You don't have to go into the army anymore. You don't have to die in a senseless war. And I'm not talking about the Basta population of Riobot. But the Basta population of Riobot still owns the land, still has their farms. No, I'm talking about people who we refer to as Bushmen or San, Khoi San, or whatever term you want to use. The people in the communal areas of Namibia, which were declared to be Bushman land, who basically are still essentially beyond the ambit of the rule of law. It's very difficult to conceive of any Bushman daring to walk into a police station in Namibia and saying, such and such a farmer has taken over my land and such a farmer has decided to start fencing this and this part of my land. The rule of law does not exist for Bushmen and San in Namibia. The position of minorities, I think the same holds true for people who happen to live in the Caprivi. The incredible crushing that took place in 1999 must not be forgotten and cannot be simply shifted aside. The same holds true for those people unfortunate enough to be associated with the previous regime, the South African regime. But they're positive things, and now we get to the very positive things. The young man here, who was the SANEX, which I will never forget. At least you're not called SANPAD, which I find a terrible acronym as well. South African Netherlands Paths for Alternative Developments, which is a horrible acronym. Anyway, the growth of the economy. I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, you guys love this stuff. growing economies. It's actually staggering. Namibia's economy has just been growing and growing and growing. Its population has also been growing and growing and growing. And this is one of the, thankfully, positive things, that the Namibian economy has been able to keep pace with the growth in the population. But it's an economy which is based on mining, an economy which is based on tourism that has been booming since independence. It's an economy based partly on agriculture, and it's an economy based on retail services. The fact that Angola had peace, the fact that northern Namibia was able to develop after the South African War, this has led to a tremendous building boom in northern Namibia and a tremendous growth in retail services towards southern Angola, everything coming through Walvis Bay and going up to the north.